Welcome to the Thoro-Graph 2015 Oaks and Derby Seminar. I'm Jerry Brown. Those of you who are not familiar with our data can find out more about it by going to the introductory section of our website. The basic idea is to measure those things that can be measured and factor them into the most accurate speed figures that can be made, creating Thoro-Graph performance figures. So ground lost or saved on turns as well as weight carried is already factored into the figures for previous races, with 5 pounds worth 1 point on the Thoro-Graph scale. The lower the figure, the better the performance. Big figures are points, the superscript is for quarter points. So big 4 and little 3 means 4 3/4. But the big difference between Thoro-Graph analysis and conventional handicapping is that we then put the performance figures on a graph for each horse so we can look at form cycles. We do not believe ability is a constant. We believe it changes from race to race for each horse, both in the short and long term. Each Thoro-Graph column is a year, with the calendar starting at the bottom and going up as the year goes on. The analysis that follows assumes the rail will be fine, but we suggest you keep an eye on the races leading up to the Oaks and Derby. It is the shortest way home, but at Churchill, big days over the last few years sometimes have featured dead rails. Angela Renee has a couple of siblings that ran negative Thoro-Graph figures. She came out firing at 2, but didn't get any better as the year went on, and has improved only marginally this year. At some point she will break through, and it could be now, but she's unlikely to jump enough to be relevant here. Ern At The Wire has 3 siblings, none of whom ever broke 10, and didn't cost much as a yearling. But she jumped to a good one late last year, then, instead of bouncing, immediately went forward again. Her last was another small forward move despite trouble, and she still has never gone back. This is a very strong developmental pattern, and with 5 weeks rest she's very unlikely to bounce now, and may well run a new top. Condo Commando is by precocious sire Tis Wonderful out of a mare that ran a negative 2, and has a brother that did as well. So all things considered, it's amazing her connections risked her for a tag first time out. She ran an enormous figure at Saratoga, but since then the best race in each cycle has gotten worse. On her good ones, this filly would have a good shot here, but we don't like her overall pattern and have serious doubts about Rudy's ability to get results in Kentucky. Eskin for Money is like Ern At The Wire in that she's never gone back and has similar figures and pattern. But this one has a much slower 2-year-old top, and having developed 5.5 points from it already, she's unlikely to go forward again in the short term. With 5 weeks rest, the most likely thing is that she'll run back to her last 2, which with a good trip could get her a piece of this. Forever Unbridled has connections to this race through her dam and full sister. Going into her last, we liked her pattern a lot, and she was fast enough to be very relevant here if she had gone forward in that one. Instead, she went back, and now needs a jump to contend. But we do note that Stewart has shown the ability to get top efforts Derby weekend more than once. I'm a Chatterbox improved dramatically when she got to Larry Jones at Fairgrounds, along with everything else in his barn. But following the 5-point new top, she immediately moved forward again, and did the same in her last. This filly has already far surpassed all her siblings, and with a good trip might be able to take the Oaks by simply pairing up. The pattern and 5 weeks rest say she will, while other indications are ambiguous. Jones hasn't done well at Churchill, but has done well historically in this race. Include Betty was very slow as a 2-year-old, improved earlier this year, then exploded in her last. Coming off not only a big new top, but one that was almost 10 points better than her 2-year-old top, this is a classic bounce scenario. Lovely Maria is another whose siblings haven't been too impressive. She established a good 2-year-old top and paired it before bouncing in the mud on short rest late in the year, then improved a little in her first 2 this year. Her last is a big new top, and if she can pair it, she's a threat here, but a bounce is more likely. Money's on Charlotte ran a good one in January, bounced badly, and then went forward despite having some trouble. She might be ready for a top effort, but starts out slower than a lot of these. Ocean Wave hasn't gone back, but also isn't that fast. She got close to include Betty last time only because she got weight and wasn't as wide. But while there's nothing wrong with her pattern, she would need a really big jump. Peace and War jumped forward when she first tried dirt to win a weak Alcibiades with a mediocre figure. Her return was poor, and she would have to improve a ton to be competitive here. Puka ran a good one last October, but hasn't been able to break through that level since. This filly has two siblings that ran tops on grass, and we suspect that is where her future lies as well. Sarah Sis was very fast sprinting as a 2-year-old, but has gradually tailed off as the distances have increased. She's tough to like off this pattern. Shook Up has a lot of pedigree and jumped to a big figure when stretched out in her second start. That one took something out of her, and it was only last time she came back around to her top. This is a very interesting filly. She could bounce again, but she could also march straight forward and run a new top, especially on 5 weeks rest. Since she'll be a price, we have to use her. Stellar Wind moved forward to a good one in her second start, then was bought privately and brought to California. She moved forward in her first for Sadler, then exploded last time with the best figure anyone in this field has ever run. She's fast and hasn't bounced yet, but that last was a big effort, and Sadler has not done well at Churchill. We can divide the Oaks field into 3 groups. The first contains those we think have virtually no chance to win and can't even use in exotics. Angela Renee, Include Betty, Ocean Wave, Peace and War, Puka, and Sarah Sis. The next group contains fillies that are more relevant. Condo Commando, Stellar Wind, and Lovely Maria are fast enough on their good ones to have a real shot, but don't have to run their best, and are no value at the prices. Asking for Money and Forever Unbridled are slower, but are much more likely to run their best, and can be used underneath. Money's Son Charlotte is a crazy bomb that could sneak into the exotics. The ones we do like are Shook Up, Ern At The Wire, and I'm a Chatterbox. The last two are clearly the most likely of the fast fillies to run their race, but Shook Up will be much longer than the others and is very usable. The draw definitely made a difference in how we'll approach the Oaks. Stellar Wind and Ern At The Wire were hurt by it. The latter may well run the best figure in the race, but she pretty much has to lose ground from there. I'm a Chatterbox should be fine, but the big winners were Asking for Money and Shook Up. Castellano will probably clear and save ground with Asking for Money, making a repeat of her last two almost sure to make the try. But the value in the race is now clearly Shook Up. Asmussen tells his riders to save ground anyway, and for post 2 it should be easy. It's probably 50-50 that she'll at least pair up her last, and if she does, that should be good enough to get her into the exact at a big price.